Then the 5-second no. Small favor, big pitfalls. Someone asks you for a small favor, and how often do you say yes without thinking twice? How often do you refuse? How often have you kicked yourself later on for agreeing? And how often have you regretted saying no? When I totted up my own statistic a few years ago in response to these questions, I realized I was agreeing to do favor for people far too often, and little things like giving a lecture, providing an article, or doing a short interview, I frequently invested more time than I would at first imagine to produce results significantly less useful than I would hope for all concerned. I set out wanting to do the other person a favor, but end up doing myself none. Where does this disease to please come from? In the 1950s, biologists attempted to find out why animals that were not blood related still cooperated with each other. Why, for instance, did chimpanzees share meat with other chimpanzees? Why would a baboon make an effort to groom another baboon's fur? When you are talking about blood-related animals, the answer is obvious. They share a high proportion of the same genes. Cooperation helps sustain this common gene pool, even if it means particular individuals lose out, even if it means they die. But why would animals that are not blood-related accept this risk? And they ask the questions another way. Why do non-related animals sometimes behave altruistically? Why does not the chimp just eat the meat itself instead of sharing it with a friend? Why does not the baboon just take it easy instead of expending valuable calories and countless hours to picking insect out of a non-relative coat? There are no trivial questions. The answer lies in mathematics and more specifically in game theory. The American political scientist Robert Axelrod once held a tournament in which different computer programs competed against each other. Each program followed a specific strategy when interacting with its opponent, cooperating with it, betraying it, behaving egotistically, always giving way, and so on. In the long term, one strategy emerged as the most successful one. Axelrod called it tit for tat. A simple strategy. It consists of the following instruction. First, be cooperative, then imitate the behavior of your opponent throughout the rest of the game. So, if after my first move my opponent cooperates, then I cooperate too. If my opponent does not cooperate, however, if he or she exploits me, then I stop cooperating. If my opponent starts cooperating further down the line, then I adapt my behavior to be cooperative once more. This is precisely the behavior we see in the animal kingdom. It's called reciprocal altruism or reciprocity. The chimpanzee shares its meal with another member of the group because it's assumed that next time its friend has food to share, it will return the favor. If the first chimpanzee returns empty-handed from the next hunt, it can still expect to eat. Reciprocity only works among animals with long memories. A chimpanzee can only pursue this strategy successfully if it remembers whether another member of the group has previously shared food with it. Only a few highly developed species have the necessary capacity for recall, primarily apes. Of course, chimps are not conscious of thinking strategically, rather evolution has made this behavior innate. Groups of apes that didn't pursue the tit for tat strategy have vanished from the gene pool. Since we human beings are merely a highly developed species of animal, this impulse toward reciprocity is present in us too. The tit for tat strategy is what keeps the global economy going. We cooperate every day with dozens of people to whom we are not related, many of them on the other side of the world, and have profited remarkably from doing so. But be careful. Reciprocity has its lurking dangers. If somebody does something nice for you, you feel that they're bound to pay them back by doing them a favor. For example, you allow yourself to become manipulable. Moreover, there is a second, far greater danger. Every tit for tat strategy begins with an opening move. a leap of faith, a first spontaneous yes, and often this is precisely what we come to regret. Once the spontaneous yes has slipped out, we tend to rationalize it. We think about the solid arguments for it and not about the time it will take to fulfill it. We value arguments above time, an error in reasoning because there is an infinite number of arguments and a decidedly finite amount of time. Ever since I realized that spontaneously agreeing to things is a deep-seated biological reflex, I have been using Charlie Munger's 5-second no as a counter-tactic, if you say so. No, if you say no, 90% of the time you are not missing much in the world. If I am asked for a favor, I mull it over for exactly 5 seconds before making up my mind, and the answer is mostly no. I would prefer to systematically turn down most requests and risk unpopularity than the other way around. Why not give it a try? It's rare to find yourself immediately dismissed as a scumbag. In fact, most people will secretly admire your consistency. 2000 years ago, the Roman philosopher Seneca wrote, all those who summon you to do themselves turn you away from your own self. So give the 5-second no a trial run. It's one of the best rules of thumb for a good life. 11. The focusing illusion. Why you wouldn't be happier in the Caribbean. Let's say you are living in New York and it's a winter. The streets are carpeted in dirty snow. You are busy scraping the windscreen of your car, and the wind keeps blowing runaway shavings of ice into your face, and your shoes are filling with the slush. Your fingertips feel as tough. They are full of needles. With a jerk, you manage to open the frozen door of your car. You sit down on the leather seat and cold as a block of ice on the rest of your hands on the chilly steering wheel. Your breath forms white clouds as it leaves your mouth. Questions. How much happier would you be if you lived in Miami Beach, where it's a balmy 26 degrees with a gentle sea breeze? Put it on a scale from 0 to 10. Most people I ask give an answer between 4 and 6, and having driven out of your parking spot, you set off for work. Moments later, you are in a traffic jam on the motorway and you reach the office 30 minutes late, where you are greeted by a flood of email and the usual hate age with your boss. After work, you do your weekly shopping, and back home, you cook your favorite meal and settle down on the sofa, watch a good film, and go to bed. Tito in Florida set off, get stuck in the jam, deal with the emails and the annoying boss, do the weekly shop, eat tasty food, watch a good film. And I will ask you again, how much happier would you be if you lived in Miami Beach? Most people now give an answer between 0 and 2. I lived in Miami Beach for 10 years. Before and after that, I lived in Switzerland. Slushy snow, occasionally icy windscreen and all. How much happier was I in Miami Beach? Answer, I was not. It's called the focusing illusion. Nothing in life is as important as you think. It is while you are thinking about it. As Daniel Kahneman explains, the more narrowly we focus on a particular aspect of our life, the greater its apparent influence. At the beginning of the description above, I concentrated almost entirely on the weather: ice in New York, sand in Miami Beach. But this aspect was therefore dominant when I asked you to compare the satisfaction of living in New York with that of living in Miami. We then sketch out a whole day from morning commute to a comfy evening on the sofa, in which the weather was only one element. If we broaden that to even longer lifetime spent, a week, a month, a year, a whole lifetime, we find that the climate suddenly becomes a negligible aspect of overall satisfaction. Overcoming the focusing illusion is the key to achieving a good life. It will enable you to avoid many stupid decisions when you compare things like cars, careers, holiday destination. You tend to focus on one aspect particularly closely. neglecting the 100 other factors. You assign this one aspect inordinate significance because of the focusing illusion. You believe this aspect is more critical than it really is. So, what can you do to combat this? You either compare all 100 factors, a labor-intensive process, or more practically, you try to see the two things you are comparing as a wholes, compare them from a distance to avoid emphasizing any single factor. Easier said than done, and let me illustrate my point. A toddler thinks solely about what's currently in front of it. If I take away one of my 3-year-old toys, he shrieks like the world is coming to an end, even though he has a dozen others and has been ignoring the one I just removed. Over the course of our life, we learn to emancipate ourselves from the momentary situation. If I feel like I'm having a beer on a warm summer's evening, then I open the fridge to find that we have run out. I don't start screaming blue murder. I can take my focus off the beer, so this desolate emptiness of my fridge has only a minimal impact on my well-being. The evening is not ruined after all. Unfortunately, however, our development in this regard is incomplete. We find it immensely difficult to view our current situation through an ultra-wide-angle lens. Otherwise, we wouldn't get upset about trivialities. How many times have you asked yourself how much better life would be if you had a different job, lived in a different location, a different house, had a different haircut? Okay, it would be a little different, but now you know that the effect of a change is considerably less than you might think. Take the longest possible view of your life, realize that the things that seemed so important in the moment have shrunk to the size of dots, dots that barely affect the overall picture. A good life is only attainable if you take the occasional peek through a wide-angle lens. When I checked into the Shangri-La Hotel beside the Jardins du Trocadero on my last visit to Paris, I found myself standing next to the man who started berating the receptionist apparently because he couldn't offer him a room with a view of the Eiffel Tower. "You are ruining my whole trip to Paris," he bawled. I shook my head. "Whether or not you can see the Eiffel Tower from your hotel bed does not actually matter. Far more important is how soundly you sleep. A view of the Eiffel Tower is much too small an aspect of a successful trip to Paris. In any case, you get more than enough of the towers as soon as you step outside the hotel." But the man, now beet red, seemed about to burst with a rage. The focusing illusion had turned a molehill into a mountain. We are especially vulnerable to the focusing illusion when it comes to money. How much happier would you be as a multimillionaire? Warren Buffett, one of the richest people in the world, once compared his own life with that of an average citizen. It didn't feel that different. Buffett spent a third of his life asleep on a normal mattress. Just like you and me, Buffett buys his clothes off the rack as cheaply as mine or yours, and his favorite drink is Coca-Cola. He eats no better or more healthily than a student. He works at a normal desk on a normal chair. His office has been in the same place since 1962 in a dull building in Omaha, Nebraska. If you compare Buffett's life minute for minute with yours, the effect of his wealth is negligible. One teeny weeny difference. Buffett owns a private jet, while the likes of us are squeezed into economy. After this chapter, however, we know that much worse than a narrow airline seat, where you will spend at most 0.1% of your life, is a narrow mindset. By focusing on trivialities, you are wasting your good life. 12. The things you buy leave no real trace. Why you should buy less and experience more. How much pleasure do you get from your car? Put it on a scale from 0 to 10. If you don't own a car, then do the same for your house, your flat, your laptop, anything like that. Psychologist Norbert Schwartz, Daniel Kahneman, and Jing Xu asked motorists this question and compared their response with the monetary value of the vehicle. The result: the more luxurious the car, the more pleasure it gave the owner. BMW 7 Series generates about 50% more pleasure than the Ford Escort. So far so good. When somebody sinks a lot of money in the vehicle, at least they get a good return on their investment in the form of joy. And now let's ask a slightly different question. How happy were you during your last car trip? The researchers posed these questions too, and again compared the motorists' answer with the value of their cars. The result, no correlation, no matter how luxurious or how shabby the vehicle, the owner's happiness rating were all equally rock bottom. The first survey revealed a correlation between the monetary value of the car and the perceived pleasure it gave its owner. The greater the luxury, the greater the pleasure. And yet the second survey revealed no such a correlation. A luxury vehicle didn't make drivers any happier. How can this be? Easy. The first question make you think about the car, while the second question make you think about completely different things. A phone call during the journey, a situation at work, a traffic jam, the idiotic driver in front. Simply put, a car makes you happy when you are thinking about it, but not when you are driving it. That's the effect of the focusing illusion, which we discussed in the previous chapter. Of course, it's not just true for cars. The focusing illusion influences the pleasure you take in everything you buy. While you are thinking about X, you tend to closely overestimate X's impact on your life. Whether it's a holiday home, a gigantic plasma television, or a new pair of low button, thinking about your purchase in a focused way makes you happy. But during daily use, these things fade to the back of your mind, minimizing their effect on your happiness. When we factor in counterproductivity, the secret side effect and hidden costs of maintaining nice things, like both time and money, we discovered that these two effects often combine to leave you out of pocket, the net result being a loss in happiness. Hard to believe? Let's take an example. You have bought this magnificent stately home outside the city. For the first 3 months, you enjoy each of its 15 rooms, delighting in every little detail. And then just 6 months down the line, you barely notice the opulence around you, and everyday life has long since caught up with you. You are occupied with other, more urgent matters at the time. At the same time, some things have changed. A house with 15 rooms and a garden is different from the 3-room apartment you used to rent in the city center. Now you need a cleaner and a gardener. You cannot do your grocery shopping on foot anymore, and your commute is an hour's drive instead of 20-minute bike ride. Basically, your George's new home has created a net loss of happiness. Your well-being account is overdrawn. This example is made up, but I have seen it happen in real life. A friend of mine owns a yacht. Owned, I should say, because he sold it again almost immediately, and still he does seem a little wiser now. The two happiest days in a yacht owner's life, he observed laconically, are the day you buy it and the day you sell it. As you can see, if it's the good life you are after, then it's advisable to show restraint about what you buy. That said, there is a class of goods whose enjoyment is not diminished by the focusing illusion. Experiences. When you experience something pleasurable, you are fully present in both heart and mind. So try to invest more in experiences than in physical objects. One side benefit is that most experiences cost less and are less subject to the effect of counterproductivity. Reading a good book, taking a trip with your family, playing cards with friends, they are all bargains. Of course, some experiences do require deep pocket, like a world tour or private space travel, but if you have got the money, they are guaranteed to be better investment than a Porsche collection. Incidental but important, your job is an experience too. It's not simply there while you do it. The way Porsche is simply there, fading to the back of your mind while you drive it. Your job monopolizes your thoughts. It demands constant, intensive engagement, which is great if you love it, but if you hate it, you have got a serious problem on your hands. You cannot hope to be distracted from your shitty career by others' thoughts. This issue was a major part of why I decided to become a writer. I love the act of writing. It's a far more important to me than The published book, of course, I'm delighted each time I pick up the first copy of a new book. I stroke the cover tenderly, lift through the pages, inhale the glorious scene of fresh binding glue, but the book soon disappears into the shelf, and I hardly give it a second thought. I am already contemplating the next one. There's nothing more idiotic than slugging away at a job that earns you lots of money but brings you no joy, especially if you are investing that money in items rather than experiences. Warren Buffett puts it in this way: working with people who cause your stomach to churn seems much like marrying for money. Probably a bad idea under any circumstances, but absolute madness if you are already rich. Speaking of marriage, in the end, it is also an experience. It's pointless maintaining a relationship that does not make you happy out of sheer loyalty or lack of other options. The focusing illusion won't rush you to your aid. Of course, not every single relationship consists exclusively of shiny days, but the darker ones should not wait the rest. If storm clouds loom, try the art of corrections. If it definitely is not working, pull the ripcord. A relationship, especially a romantic one, will never retreat into the background of your mind. In sum, we overestimate the impact of poor cases on our well-being and underestimate the impact of experiences. The thought of your house, even if you are currently standing in it, vanish into the cacophony of your other daily thoughts with the experiences. This is not the case, but what if you have already bought your low Putin? Then at least make sure you are consistently enjoying them. Ideally, you want to be brushing and polishing them each morning and dreaming of nothing but bright red shoes, shawls each night. Make the focusing illusion work to your advantage for once. Yeah. 13. Fuck you, money. Saving up freedom. The sun is burning on your back and the air shimmers like a glass above the sun. Your gums feel like a sandpaper and you drank your last drop of water 2 days ago. You have been on all fours ever since, crawling toward an oasis on the horizon. How much would you pay for a liter of water right now? Let's say you have paid for and received the water. You have slacked the worst of your thirst. And how much would you pay for the second liter and for a third? Unless you happen to be some sort of fakir blessed with a superhuman power of endurance, you will probably give your entire saving plus pension and holiday cottage for the first liter. For the second, maybe your Breitling watch. For the third, your headphones. For the fourth, your insoles. Economists call it diminishing margin utility. Each additional liter yields less marginal utility than the last, and after a certain point it yields nothing at all. This holds true for virtually all goods: water, clothing, TV channel, but above all for the money, which brings us to a question for many thousands of years old. Can money buy happiness? Here is a test questions. How much would you have to earn per year in order to feel that additional income would no longer have any effective impact on your perceived well-being? Write down the figure in the margin before reading on. Research offers clear answers. If you are living in a poverty, money plays a major role. Financial difficulties are sheer misery. If you are living on a moderate income, money plays a more moderate role above a household income. The effect of additional income rings to nil and remains there even if you reach the million mark. It's not all that surprising. Imagine the life of a billionaire from sun up to sundown, moment by moment. Every rich people have to brush their teeth and they sleep badly. Sometimes they feel like crap, argue with their families, fear age and death, and on top of that, they have a whole retinue of stuff to manage, the media to fob off, and a flood of begging letter to work through. Does having an Olympic-sized swimming pool in your garden really cancel all that out? I don't know. Imagine you have bought a nice piece of land and built a house. The house is magnificent, with at least 3 more bedrooms than you need, and one year later somebody else buys the neighboring plot, construct a house, and lavish it, make your look like a garden shade. What happens? Your blood pressure rises and your life satisfaction drops, even though you are still living very well. Money is relative, not just in comparison to others, but in comparison to your past. If you earn $50,000 per year during the first half of your career and today you earned $75,000, you will be happier than if you first earned $75,000 and now you earn just $60,000. This is despite the fact that averaging the figures, you come out better off overall in the second scenario. Simply put, your level of wealth above the poverty line is primarily a matter of interpretation, but this is a good news. It means it's up to you whether money makes you happy or not. There are a few rules of thumb for dealing with the money. The first has been termed by some linguistically adventurous the individual "fuck you money" in reference to the last two words ever. Presumably you will yell at your boss before storming out of the office, and basically "fuck you money" refers to the saving that would allow you to quit your job at the moment's notice without ending up in dire financial straits. 1 year salary, say. Fuck you money is freedom. More important even than material independence is that fuck you money allows you to see and think objectively. So if you haven't saved up your fuck money yet, keep your fixed costs low. The lower your outgoing, the quicker you will reach your goal. In any case, it's a nice feeling to have money without spending much of it. And two, don't react to minor fluctuation in your income or assets. Has the value of your stock portfolio risen or dropped by 1% today? Don't let it worry you. Basically, don't think so much about money. It will multiply more quickly the more you often think about it. Number three, don't compare yourself with the wealthy. It will make you unhappy. If you must, compare yourself with those who have less than you do, but it's better not to compare yourself with anyone at all. 4. Even if you are filthy rich, life modesty, wealth makes people jealous. Anyone who has enough cash can buy a luxury yacht, and there is no skill to that. If you are a billionaire, it's more impressive not to buy one, to live modesty. Essentially, once you have left the poverty line behind you and save up a financial safety net, money is not among the factors that contribute to a good life, so work on those other factors instead of hoarding money. And genuinely success, as we will see in the final chapter, is anything but financial. 14. The circle of competence. Why it's important to know your limits? Nobody understands the world completely. It's far too complex for a single human brain. Even if you are highly educated, you can only understand a tiny part. Still, that's something. This minuscule patch is the runaway you need for takeoff, what you need to fulfill your high-flying dreams. If you don't have one, you will never leave the ground. Warren Buffett uses the wonderful term circle of competence. Inside the circle of that skill you have mastered, beyond it are the things you understand only partly or not at all. Buffett's life motto: know your circle of competence and stick within it. The size of that circle is not very important. Knowing its boundaries, however, is vital. Charlie Munger adds, each of you will have to figure out where your talent lies, and you will have to use your advantages, but if you try to succeed in what you are worse at, you are going to have a very lousy career. I can almost guarantee it. Tom Watson, the founder of IBM, is living proof of this thesis. As he is said of himself, I'm no genius, I'm smart in spots, but I stay around those spots. Be rigorous in organizing your professional life around this idea, because a radical focus on your circle of competence will bear more than monetary fruit. Equally important is the emotional variety. You will gain an invaluable feeling of mastery, and you will also be more efficient because you won't have to decide every time whether to accept or refuse a task. With a star politically needed circle of competence, inscrutable but irresistible requests suddenly become resistible. Crucially, you should never step outside your circle of competence. Many years ago, a wealthy entrepreneur offered me €1,000,000 to write his biography. It was an extremely tempting offer. I turned it down. Biographies lies outside of my circle of competence. A top-notch biography requires endless conversation and meticulous research. It demands other skills besides those needed for novel and non-fiction. Skills I do not possess. I would have spent my wheels, got frustrated, and most importantly, written at best a mediocre book. Alongside the impulse to step outside your circle of competence is the equally powerful temptation to broaden it. This temptation is especially great if you are successful within your current circle. If you are entirely comfortable there, resist it. Skills do not transfer from one arena to another. In other words, skills are domain specific. A master chess player is not automatically going to be a good business strategist. A heart surgeon is not automatically a good hospital manager. A real estate speculator is not automatically a good president. So how do you create a circle of competence? Clicking around on Wikipedia is not enough, nor is a traditional degree. It takes time, lots of time. Expect anything worthwhile to take a really long time. Is the real American designer D.B. Millman sticks to with a great success? It also takes obsession. Obsession is a kind of addiction, which is why it's often spoken of disparagingly, and we read about young people getting addicted to video games, to a TV series, to model airplane. It's high time you frame obsession more positively. Obsession drives people to invest thousands and thousands of hours into something. A young man, Bill Gates, had an obsession: programming. Steve Jobs, calligraphy and design. Warren Buffett first put his pocket money into stock and shares as a 12-year-old, and he has been addicted to investing ever since. Nobody today would say that Gates, Jobs, or Buffett wasted their youth. Quite the contrary, it's because they were so obsessed that they invested the thousands of hours it takes to achieve the mastery of something. Obsession is an engine, not engine failure. The opposite of obsession, by the way, is not aversion but interest, a polite equivalent to saying, I'm not really that interested. Why is the circle of competence such a powerful idea? What's its secret? Simple. A brilliant programmer is not just twice as skilled as a good one, nor 3 times or even 10 times. A brilliant programmer would solve the same problem in 1,000th of the time it would take a programmer who was merely good. Ditto for lawyers, surgeons, designers, researchers, salespeople, inside versus outside. At the circle of competence, we are talking about thousands-fold differences. Here is the other thing. The idea that you can make life stick to a plan is an illusion. Change tears through everything. Sometimes with the force of hurricane, there is only one place where it windows to a gentle breeze, and that's inside your circle of competence. You might not find it plain sailing even there, but at least the waves will allow you to navigate properly. In more prosaic terms, and within your circle of competence, you are protected to a certain extent against illusion and fallacies. You could even risk breaking with the convention because you have the necessary light of the land and can predict roughly what's going to happen. The upshot: stop beating yourself up over your deficiencies. If you have got 2 left feet, forget the salsa lessons. If your kids cannot tell whether that squiggle is supposed to be a horse or a cow, stop dreaming of a career as an artist. If you can barely cope with a visit from your aunt, drop the idea of opening your own restaurant. The truth is that it's completely irrelevant how many areas you are average or below average in, and what matters is that you are far above average in at least one area. Ideally the best in the world. Once you get started, you will have a solid basis for a good life. A single outstanding skill trumps 1,000 mediocre at once. Every hour invested into your circle of competence is worth 8,000 spent elsewhere. 15. The secret of persistence. Why boors are more successful than adventurers. Stockbrokers, collar unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, and yelling into several telephones at once, gesticulating as though their lives were on the line. The air crackles. Every now and again, one of them slams a receiver down onto the table like he wants to break it. Then the traders start bowling at each other over their Bloomberg terminals, on which stock prices flash like a carnival lights, and this is how the media depict the world of finance. Relaying images from the stock market floor are the trading area and the bank, scenes exchange. A dollop is on the 14th floor of an assuming high-rise in sleepy Omaha, Nebraska, the most negligible state in the USA. No Bloomberg terminals, no computer, no emails, just an old-fashioned desk and a telephone. There he sits, day after day, as he has done for nearly 50 years. Warren Buffett, the most successful investor of all the time, the contrast couldn't be starker. On the one hand, hyperactive, sweat-drenched, testosterone-laden stockbrokers. On the other, quiet, silver-haired Uncle Warren. Once you have grasped the difference between speculating and investing, you will start seeing parallel everywhere, and you will have a good mental tool to hand. So, what exactly is the difference? The stockbrokers are trying to make it profit through frenetically buying and selling shares, and what's behind the shares? A software firm in California, a copper mine in Peru is irrelevant. What matters is that the share prices move temporarily in the right direction. Classic investor, however, buys shares in only a handful of companies which they know as truly as the back of their hands. The opening of the market means nothing to them. Their commitment is long-term, to avoid transaction costs. They buy and sell as frequently as possible, and Buffett and Charlie Munger don't even seek out new investment opportunities. They wait for opportunities to come to them. From the horse's mouth, Charlie and I just sit around and wait for the phone to ring. Who is more successful? Speculators or investors? There are winners and losers on both sides, but the giant among the winners are to be found only on the side of the investor. Why is that? One central difference: investors take advantage of a long time spent, stockbrokers don't. Our brains love short-term, spasmodic development, and we react exaggeratedly to highs and lows, to rapid changes and jarring news, but continued changes we barely notice. As a result, we systematically overemphasize doing above not doing, and zeal above deliberation, and action above waiting. What are the most purchased books of all the time? Not the ones on the current bestseller list or stock highest on bookshop tables. I mean the ones that have remained continually in print for decades or even hundreds of years: the Bible, Mao's Little Red Book, the Koran, the Communist Manifesto, the Lord of the Ring, the Little Prince. They are known as long sellers, and no publisher can live without them. The same goes for Broadway shows, tourist attractions, songs, and many other products. The most successful car of the time, the Toyota Corolla, continuously available as a new since 1966, and now in its 11th generation. It was not the first year's turnover that made the Corolla a superstar, but the span of time over which it has been sold. Such long-term successes often have inconspicuous ingredients that function like a baking powder, producing incremental progress that builds up over a long period of time. Take the example of investment. If you invest $10,000 at a 5% return, after a year you will be $500 richer, piece of a cake. But if you keep reinvesting this modest profit, after 10 years you will achieve a capital of $16,000 after 20 years of an impressive $26,000, and after 50 an incredibly $115,000. Your capital will accrue not linearly but exponentially, because our brain have no instinct for duration. They also have no feel for exponential growth. This, then, is the secret of persistence. Long-term successes are like making cake with a baking powder. Slow, boring, long-winded processes lead to the best result, and the same goes for your life. There has never been a century in which activity, industry, and zeal are so celebrated as in our own. The modern religion of disruption in demand that we constantly raise and rebuild our career, our companies, and even our life. Only by doing so, says the consensus, will we remain competitive. Similarly, many people are convinced that for a life to be good, it must be one long high-like reel of adventures, travels, relocations. I believe the opposite is the case. The more peaceful the life, the more productive. Yeah. So what does this mean for the good life? Less busy work, more endurance. Once you have identified your circle of competence, stick at it as long as possible, and likewise if you find a good spouse, a suitable place to live, or a rewarding hobby, perseverance tenacity, and long-term thinking are highly valuable yet underrated virtues. We should start fostering them again, and you don't have to be brilliant, as Charlie Munger says, only a little bit wiser than the other guys, on average for a long time. Long time. 16. The tyranny of a calling. Do what you can, not what you wish you could. Antony was born in 251 AD and the son of the wealthy landowner in Egypt. When he turned 18, his parent died, and in the courage he heard the following words from the Gospel of Matthew: "If thou wilt be perfect, go and sell that thou hast, and give the poor, and that thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me." So Antony went and sold all his earthly possessions to go wandering along the edge of the desert, where he lived for many years as a hermit. In time others followed, and their numbers grew, and young men who had also heeded God's call, a loosely affiliated band of recluses living separately from one another. They formed the core of Christian monasticism, and today Antony is known as the father of monks. 1,000 years later, something similar happened to the son of the rich Italian clothier. Francis of Assisi had been living in a dissolute life until he heard God calling to him in a dream and giving away all he owned, and he swapped his clothes for those of a beggar and lived as a hermit, restoring courtiers, and gradually other people were drawn to him, and he founded the Franciscan order. And when we hear the word calling today, we think the people like Antony or Francis of Assisi, they couldn't help but follow God's call. We see similar moment in the lives of Paul, Augustine, Blaise Pascal, and other converts in and beyond the Bible. At the same time, however, calling has a decidedly temporary ring. How can I find my calling? Is one of the most common questions I hear from young people. It's time I have to bite my tongue because calling is a relic of Christianity. For somebody who does not believe in God, the term sounds somewhat delusional. And of course, people in search of a calling these days are not interested in repudiating worldly concern. On the contrary, they are looking to engage with the world more closely, and they cherish the romantic notion that deep inside every human being is a bud waiting to blossom into something profound. Hence why they pay such a close attention to their inner voices. They are hoping to hear the call of some fulfilling activity, but that's dangerous, because the concept of a calling is one of the greatest illusions of our age. John Kennedy Tolle considered himself born to write, and when the 26-year-old American submitted the manuscript to the publisher Simon & Schuster, he was convinced he would send off the novel of the century, but Simon & Schuster turned him down, as did all the other publishers he tried. His most deeply held conviction shaken to the core, Tolle turned to booze, and 6 years later, in 1969, in Biloxi, Mississippi, he stuck a garden hose into the exhaust pipe of his car and fed the other end inside the vehicle, killing himself. After his suicide, his mother finally managed to find a publisher for a manuscript, and A Confederacy of Adventures was published in 1980, hailed by critics as a masterpiece of literature from the American South, and Tolle was posthumously awarded the Pulitzer Prize for the best novel of the year. The book sold more than 1.5 million copies. One of the symptoms of approaching nervous breakdown is the belief that one's work is terribly important, wrote Bertrand Russell. This is precisely the danger of a calling, that you take yourself and your work too seriously. If, like John Kennedy Tolle, you pin everything on the fulfillment of your supposed vocation, you cannot live a good life. If Tolle had viewed his writing not as his only possible calling, but simply as a craft for which he happened to have a special knack, he would probably not have ended up as he did. You can pursue a craft with love, of course, and even with a touch of obsession, but your focus should always be on the activity, the work, the input, not on the success, the result, the output. And better, I'm going to do at least 3 pages today, then tomorrow I have got to win the Nobel Prize in literature. The romantic notion that a calling makes you happy is false. Those who dodge pursue their vocation are not happy. They are just touched and probably soon to be frustrated as well because most calling are inextricable from unrealistic expectation. If you set out to write the novel of your century, break a world record, found a new religion, or end world poverty once and for all, you have maybe a change in a trillion of accomplishing your goal. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to set lofty goals, but only on the condition that you maintain a distance, level-headed relationship with them. If you go blindly chasing after your calling, that's a surefire recipe for a miserable life. A related pitfall is a selection bias. We only see successful examples of people with a calling, Marie Curie, who decided to become a scientist at age 15 and would later win 2 Nobel Prizes, or Picasso, who was accepted to art school at 10 and went on to revolutionize painting, and such inspiring stories have been the subject of countless biographies, interviews, and documentary films. And what we don't see, however, is the infinitely larger pool of failure. The frustrated scientist whose research paper is read by exactly 2 people. His wife and his mother are the unrecognized pianist who now follows her calling as a music teacher in some nowhere town. Even though she has no gift for teaching, they are followed the siren song of their vocation into obscurity. Yet not even local recs report on these people. Why should they? People often claim they had no choice but to do X. It's nice romantic rhetoric, but it's essentially nonsense. Hunters and gatherers had no choice. A slave in Egypt had no choice. A farmer's wife in the Middle Ages had no choice. But if somebody in the present day tells you his inner voice left him no choice but to dedicate his life to the Twitter, you can be reasonably sure he is at least one sandwich short of a picnic. Even if there were such a thing as a true calling, it certainly wouldn't be advisable to pursue it what may. Hackers, fraudsters, terrorists all believe they have found their calling and are fulfilled by the work. Hitler doubtless felt the same, as did Napoleon, Stalin, and Osama bin Laden. Clearly, a calling is no guarantee of a moral compass. So what to do? Don't listen to your inner voice. A calling is nothing but a job you would like to have. In the romantic sense, it doesn't not exist. There is only talent and preference built on the skill you actually have, not on some putative sense of vocation. And luckily, the skill we have mastered are often the thing we enjoy doing. One important aside, other people have also got to value your talent. You have got to put food on the table somehow. As the English philosopher John Gray put it, few people are as unhappy as those with the talent no one cares about. 17. The present of a good reputation. How to shift from external to internal validation. Which would you rather? To be the most intelligent person on earth but considered the stupidest, or the stupidest person on earth but considered the most intelligent? When Bob Dylan was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2016, he didn't acknowledge it for weeks. No statement, no interviews. He wouldn't even take the Swedish Academy's phone calls. Criticism rained down from all sides. How ungrateful can somebody be? So arrogant, so indifferent. When Dylan finally responded, speaking in an interview with a British newspaper, he dryly observed, "I appreciate the honor so much," as though the words had been forced into his mouth by a PR consultant. He did not attend the award ceremony, or rather, he was 3 months late. One can only assume that he couldn't care less about the world's most prestigious prize. Grigory Perelman, born in 1966, is considered the greatest living mathematician. In 2002, he solved one of the 7 mathematical millennium problems. The remaining 6 are still unsolved. He was selected for the Fields Medal, a kind of Nobel Prize for mathematics, and declined. He even turned down the $1 million prize money, although he could certainly use it. And Perelman is unemployed, living with his mother in a high-rise block in St. Petersburg. Mathematics is all that matters to him. He is utterly indifferent to what the world thinks of him and his achievement. When I first started writing, it was most important to me to know what other people thought of my books, and I delighted in positive reviews and fretted over every word of criticism. I took applause as a measure of my success. At some point during my mid-40s, however, I had my Bob Dylan moment. I understood that public perception has little to do with the quality of my work. It makes my books no better or worse, having this insight felt like a being released from a prison of my own making. But back to my initial questions. Warren Buffett puts it like this: would you rather be the world's greatest lover, but have everyone think you are the world's worst lover? Or would you rather be the world's worst lover, but have everyone think you are the world's greatest lover? In doing so, Buffett outlines one of the ideas most vital to leading a good life: the difference between an inner scorecard and an outer scorecard. Which matters more to you? How you evaluate yourself, or how the outside world evaluates you? In teaching your kids, I think the lesson they are learning at a very, very early age is what their parents put the emphasis on. If all the emphasis is on what the world's going to think about you, forgetting about how you really behave, you will wind up with an outer scorecard, and that, as I am sure you have already guessed, is a pretty effective way of securing a good life from square one. The urge to present the best possible image of ourselves is, however, an impulse that runs deep. Which do you think was more important to our hunter-gatherers and centaurs, the inner scorecard or the outer scorecard? The latter, of course. Their lives depended absolutely on what other people thought of them, on whether their fellow human being would cooperate with them or banish them from the group. And centaurs, heedless of their outer scorecards, would soon have finished from the gene pool. The first town of the village were established approximately 10,000 years ago, because it was no longer possible for everybody in these settlements to know everybody else, personally taking good care of the reputation that preceded you become increasingly important. Gossip assumed the function of personal acquaintance, and gossip has since conquered in the world. Next time you are meeting a friend, keep track. You will spend 19% of the time talking about the other people. There are understandable evolutionary reasons why we are so concerned about how we come across the other, but this does not mean it still makes sense today. On the contrary, the opinions of others are far less significant than you think. Your emotional response to change in your prestige, reputation, and appearance are much too highly attuned. Or to put it another way, you are still in the Stone Age mode. Whether they are praising you to the skies or dragging your name through the mud, the actual impact on your life is considerably smaller than your pride or sense of the same would have you believe. So liberate yourself. Here is 3 reasons why you should. First, you will be spared the emotional roller coaster. In the long run, you cannot manage your reputation perfectly anyway. And Warren Buffett cites Gianni Agnelli, the former boss of Fiat. When you get old, you have the reputation you deserve. You can fool the other people for a while, but not a lifetime. Second, concentrating on prestige and reputation distorts our perception of what makes us truly happy. And third, it stresses us out. It's detrimental to the good life. Concentrating on your outer scorecard has never been more prevalent than it is today. Social media, says David Brooks, creates a culture in which people turn into little brand managers, using Facebook, Twitter, text messages, and Instagram to create a falsely upbeat, slightly over-exuberant external self. Brooks uses the marvelous term approval-seeking machine to describe what people can become if they are not careful. Facebook's likes, rating, followers, they all transmute instant, quantifiable feedback into status, which is not even your actual status. And once you are caught in this web, it's not easy to extricate yourself and lead a good life. The upshot: the world is going to write, tweet, and post about you whenever it damn well pleases. And people will gossip and tattle behind your back, and they will heap you with a price and drag you into search storms. You cannot control it, but thankfully you don't have to. If you are not a politician or a celebrity and you don't earn your money via advertising, then stop worrying about your reputation. Let go of liking and being liked, and don't Google yourself, and don't crave recognition. Instead, accomplish something. Live in such a way that you can still look at yourself in the mirror and say it's perfect. If I do prize something I have done but I'm not satisfied, I feel unhappy. That's the perfect inner scorecard. So focus on that and treat external prize and censor with the friendly, composed disinterest. 16 and then 17 and now 18th. The end of history illusion. You can change yourself, but not other people. Every time I walk through Zurich airport, I notice slight changes. A new shop here, a new coffee place there, a gigantic billboard display overhead, a gleaming new check-in desk, a rate like a soldier now and again. I drive into new parking structure. Sometimes I find myself frantically scanning a renovated terminal wing for electricity socket. I traverse the labyrinth of the airport about once a month. On average, I have done so for 30 years. Each time my brain accustoms itself to the fractionally different infrastructure. So next time I find my way to the gate without issue. When I think back to my first visit, however, as a small boy holding my mother's hand, waiting to welcome my father back from a business trip, I saw him coming down the airplane steps, waving at us across the runway. It strikes me that airport has virtually nothing in common with one of that exists today. In the States, Zurich Clothing Airport had a single chilly hall through which a monotone voice announced every departure and called every lead passenger after the loudspeaker. In German, English, French, you could hear the periodic rustling of the letter and number of the destination board being turned. Today, Zurich International Airport is essentially a bustling shopping center with the 3 runways. I'm sure you can also think of places, train stations, cities, and universities that have changed completely over the long period without you really noticing it on all your visits. But what about you? How much have you changed over time? Try to imagine who you were 20 years ago. Don't think about external things like a job, home, appearance, but your personality, your character, your temperament, your values, and predilections. Compare that person with your current self. How would you rate the amount you have changed on a scale from 0, no change, to 10, complete change, I'm totally different person? Most people I asked identified several differences in their personality, values, and likes and dislikes over the last 20 years. They usually come up with a figure between 2 and 4, not the drastic remodeling of Zurich Airport, but still have changed a little. And now for my follow-up questions. How much do you think you will change over the next 20 years? The usual answer are never much lower, between 0 and 1. In other words, most people don't believe they will change in the future, not deep down, and if so, it will only be a tiny bit, unlike airports, train stations, and cities. Funny, isn't it? Can it really be true that today is the day our personality stop developing? Of course not. Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert calls this the end of history illusion. The reality is that we will change almost as much in the future as we have in the past. In what direction? Well, that's unclear, but it's safe to say you will have different personality with different values. The research is unambiguous, but let's put a big concept like a personality and values on the back burner for a moment. Let's just take out things you like. Think back 20 years. What was your favorite film? What is it today? And who were your idols? Who are they today? Who are your most important friends? And who are they today? Take a minute to answer these questions. Gilbert had an ingenious idea about how to measure these changes in people's likes and dislikes. He asked people two questions. What was your favorite band 10 years ago? And how much would you pay today for a ticket to one of their concerts? And B, what is your favorite band today and how much would you pay for a ticket to one of their concerts in 10 years? The difference is remarkable. People are willing to pay an average 60% more to hear their current favorite band play in 10 years' time than their former favorite band today. Proof of the end of the history illusion and the instability of our preferences. I have a good news and a bad news. First, the good. You can exercise some influence over changes in your personality, not much. The vast majority of this development will unfold according to the interplay between a genetic program and its environment. But nonetheless, you ought to seize your change. The most efficient way to steer your development is to use your idols. So be careful how you choose the people you admire. The bad news, you cannot change other people, no, not even your partner or your children. Motivation for personal change must come from within, and neither externalized pressure, no rational argument will work. That's why one of my golden rules for leading a good life is as follows. Avoid situations in which you have to change other people. This simple strategy has already spared me a good deal of misery, expense, and a disappointment. And practical term, I never employ anybody whose character I have to change, because I know I cannot. I don't do business with people whose disposition does not suit me, no matter how profitable it might potentially be, and I would never take on leadership of an organization if I had to alter the mindset of the people in it. Smart business people have always taken that back. One of the Southwest Airlines guiding principles since its inception has been hire for attitude, train for skill. Attitudes cannot be altered, at least not in a reasonable amount of time, and certainly not by external pressures. Skills can. I'm constantly surprised to see how many people disregard the simple rule. A friend of mine, a party animal and a social butterfly, married a beautiful introverted woman and assumed he would be able to turn this quiet soul into an outgoing party lover. He failed, of course, and the result was a quick and expensive divorce. A related life rule is only work with people you like and trust. As a Charlie Munger says, it's just so useful dealing with people you can trust and getting all the hell out of your life. But wise people want to avoid other people who are just total red poisoned, and there are a lot of them. So how do you rid yourself of these poisonous individuals? One recommendation every year on December 31, my wife and I write down on slips of paper the names of people who are not good for us and whom we no longer want to in our life. Then we cast them solemnly into the fire, one by one. It's a therapeutic and salutary ritual. 19. The smaller meaning of life. Which goals you can achieve and which you cannot. When the author Terry Pierce tried to call his friend Gary, he heard the following message. Hi, this is Gary, and this is not an answering machine, this is a question machine, and the two questions are, who are you and what do you want? There was a pause, then the voice continued, and if you think these are trivial questions, consider that 95% of the population goes through life and never answers either one. How would you answer the question, who are you? Most people give their name and say what they do for a living, sometimes follow up with a brief snippet of information about their family. I'm a mother of two children, or a personality trait, I like people. But what use is responsible like that? No one's. You cannot hold it against them, tough, because there is no single sentence answer to the question about your own identity, nor a single paragraph, one for that matter, and nor 10 pages regardless of who you are. You would need a novel of Proustian depth to do justice to your life and being, because our life consists of infinitely many facets. Any one line's answer is by definition inaccurate. Yet we are constantly reducing ourselves to that, not only when we call Gary, but interestingly with ourselves as a part of our own self-conception. We construct an image of ourselves that's like a comic book drawing, absurdly oversimplified, completely without contradictions, and entirely too positive, as we will see. We fabricate all the story we tell ourselves about our life, but here is a sneak preview. You are better off not answering the question of who you are. You will only be wasting your time. On the second question, what do you want? Unlike the first, this question is eminently answerable. Indeed, it's crucial you should replay. It's asking about your purpose in life, sometimes also referred to as the meaning of life. And now the word meaning is something confusing, so I recommend distinguishing more precisely between the larger meaning of life and the smaller meaning of life. If you are trying to find a larger meaning of life, you are looking for answers to questions like, why are we on this earth? Why does the universe exist? And what does it all mean? So far, every culture has responded with its own mythology. Particularly lovely is the notion that the earth is the shell of an enormous tortoise, a myth that can be found in both China and South America, or the Christian mythos God creates everything in 6 days, and on the day of judgment he will wipe the slate clean. Unlike the writers of mythology, science has found no answer to the larger meaning of life questions. All it knows about life is that it will continue to develop aimlessly as long as there is sufficient material and energy available. There is no discernible overreaching purpose, not for humanity, life, or the universe, and the world is fundamentally meaningless, so stop looking for the larger meaning of life. You are only wasting your time. The question of the smaller meaning of life, however, is crucial. It's about your personal goals, your ambitions, your missions. It's about this second question on Gary's answering machine. And there can be no good life without personal goals. Seneca figured out that 2,000 years ago. Let all your effort be directed to something. Let it keep the end in mind, and there is no guarantee of achieving your end. But if you don't have one, you are guaranteed to achieve nothing. Life goals are massively important. An example: researchers in the USA surveyed 17 and 18-year-old students about the importance of financial success, asking them to rate it on a scale where 1 means unimportant, 2 somewhat important, 3 very important, 4 indispensable. Many years later, they surveyed the same people about their actual income and about now how happy they were with their life in general. And the first result, the greater people's financial ambition in the younger years, the more they earned by the middle age. Turns out goals work, and that only came as a surprise to the psychologists who had believed for a very long time that people merely reacted to externally stimuli like a Pavlov's dogs. And the second result of the students who had set their sights on a high-income job after finishing their education, and who had achieved that goal, tended to deeply satisfied with their life. By contrast, those for whom money was important but who had failed to achieve their financial goals were deeply unsatisfied. Sure, you may be thinking money makes you happy, but that's not it, because a higher income had no effect on the satisfaction of people for whom wealth was not a life goal. It's not money that makes you happy or unhappy, it's whether or not you realize your ambition. The equivalent holds true for others' life goals too. And why do goals work? Because goal-oriented people put more effort into accomplishing them. And because goals make decision easier, life consists of endless fork in the road. And you could make each choice on a whim or a river to your goals. No wonder students who describe financial success as indispensable in the study choose well-paying jobs like a doctor, lawyer, consultant. Life goals then are recommended, and yet there are two potential problems. One recipe for a dissatisfied adulthood is setting goals that are especially difficult to attain. As Daniel Kahneman has observed, in other words, you need to make sure your goals are realistic. If you are short and squat and dreaming of becoming a basketball star, you have steamed yourself right off the bat. And ditto, if you want to be the first person on Mars or the president or a billionaire, you cannot really aim for goals like that, because 99% of the various things that have to fall into place are beyond your control. Unrealistic goals are killjoys. My recommendations: live your goals deliberately, little folk, and well off instead of billionaire. Or for instance, if you achieve them, wonderful. If you don't, you can still interpret your situation as tough. You had, at least in part. It doesn't even have to be a conscious process. Your brain will do it for you automatically. The upshot: goals work. Goals are important, yet most people don't think clearly enough about the smaller meaning of life. Either they have no goals or they merely accept the ones currently in vision. And sometimes, however, the path to a good life means adjusting the bar and setting achievable goals. What matters is to know where you are going, not to get any old place quickly. 20. Your two selves. Why your life is not a photo album. I would like to introduce you to the two people you know very well, although not by name. Your experiencing self and your remembering self. Your experiencing self is the part of your conscious mind that experiences the present moment. In your case, it's reading these words right now. In a while, it will experience you shutting the book and putting it down. Maybe getting to your feet and brewing a cup of tea, and your experiencing self experiences not only what you are currently doing, but also what you are thinking and feeling as you do it. It perceives a physical condition like a tiredness, toothache, or tensions, mixing it all together into a single experience, a moment. How long does a moment last? Psychologists estimate 3 seconds, or give or take. That's the span of time we perceive as the present, and basically it's all the experience things we condense into now. A longer period are perceived as a series of individual moments, discounting time spent asleep, and this adds up to approximately 20,000 moments per day, about half a billion moments over an average lifespan. What happens? To all the impression hurtling through your brain every second, the vast majority are irretrievably lost. To test yourself, what exactly did you experience 24 hours, 10 minutes, 3 seconds ago? Maybe you had to sneeze, or you look out of the window, press a crumb of your trousers. Whatever it was, it's gone now. We retain less than a millionth of our experiences. We are gigantic experience vanishing machines, and that was your experiencing self. The second person I would like to introduce is your remembering self. This is the part of your conscious mind that gathers, evaluates, and organizes the few things your experiencing self has not thrown away. If 24 hours, 10 minutes, and 3 seconds ago you were putting the best praline you have ever tasted into your mouth, then perhaps your remembering self does in fact still know that. The difference between your two selves can be illustrated with a simple questions. Are you happy? Take a little time to answer these questions. Okay, how did you get on? If you consulted your experiencing self, it will have replayed with your currently experienced condition, your mental state during that exact 3-second interval. As the author of the words you are reading, I naturally hope the response was positive. If, however, you ask your remembering self, it will have given you a broad assessment of your overall mood, roughly how you have been feeling recently, and how generally satisfied you are with your life. Unfortunately, the two selves rarely give the same reply. Researchers studied happiness among students during the holidays, with some days randomly survey their momentary state, texting them questions several times a day. With others, they questions the student at the end of the holiday. The results: the experiencing self was less happy than the remembering self. Not surprising, really. I'm sure you have heard the rose-tinted glasses. Lots of things seem better in retrospect, but this also means we shouldn't trust our power of recall because they are prone to systematic error. Yeah. The magnitude of this error is revealed by the following experiment. Students held their hand in cold 14-degree water for 1 minute, a rather unpleasant experience. In a second test, they held their hand in a cold 14-degree water for 1 minute, then cold 15-degree water for 30 seconds. Immediately afterwards, they were asked which version they would like to repeat. 80% opted for the second. That makes no sense because viewed objectively, the second version was worse. All the pain of the first go-round plus the relative unpleasantness of the second. What's going on here? Daniel Kahneman calls it the peak and rule, which we encountered. He realized that we remember most clearly the peak of an episode, the moment of the greatest intensity at the end. Hardly anything else filtered through into our memories. In the case of the water experiment, the peak experience was identical in both versions. The cold 14-degree water, the ends, however, were different. The end of the first version, 14 degrees, was more unpleasant than the end of the second, 15 degrees, which is why the test subject brains recorded the later as more pleasant, even though from the perspective of the experiencing self, it was less so. Not even duration mattered. The student didn't factor in the length of the experiment at all, whether it lasted 60 or 90 seconds. This holds true more generally. Whether you are on holiday for 1 week or 3, your memory of it will be roughly the same. Likewise, whether you are in the present for a month or a year, it makes no difference to your memory. The specific amount of time spent behind bars will be forgotten. This cognitive bias is called duration neglect, and apart from the peak end rule, it's the most serious error your remembering self can commit. While the experiencing self is leakage, it throws almost everything away. The remembering self is remarkably error prone, and it leads us to make the wrong decision because of our remembering self is miscalculation. We tend to price brief, intense pleasure too highly and quiet, lasting, tranquil joys too little, bungee jumping instead of long hikes, and thrilling one-night stands instead of regular sex with your partner, attention-grabbing YouTube video instead of a good book. And there is a whole genre of books on extreme living. Their authors are almost exclusively war reporters, extreme mountain climbers, startup entrepreneurs, or performance artists. They preach that life is too short for moderate pleasures, only in the extreme high and low. Can you really feel anything? A calm, unspectacular life is a filled life. This author and their readers have fallen into the trap of the remembering self. Running barefoot across the USA or conquering Everest in a record time can only be considered wonderful experiences in the retrospect. At the time, they are torture. Extreme sport feed memory at the cost of moment-by-moment happiness. So, which one matters? Your experiencing self or your remembering self? Both, of course. Nobody wants to miss out on a great memories, yet we tend to overvalue the remembering self, living with one eye on the aggregation of future memories instead of focusing on the present, and guard against this impulse. Decide what's more important to you, a fulfilled moment-to-moment life or a full photo album.